Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. This June 4th marks the 29-year anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, or as they call it in China. But while the Chinese Communist Party encourages people's collective amnesia, there's one Tiananmen survivor who's dedicated his life to making sure people remember. I sat down with Fang Zheng at the Oslo Freedom Forum. Thank you for joining me on China Uncensored, Fang Zheng.
你好。
Hello. So, why did you join the student protests in 1989?
我觉得很自然，因为
It was very natural. I was a senior in college at the time, and like all of the young people at the time, we were full of hope for our country. We loved our country. We wanted to express our wishes so that the country could be even better. So in 1989, during the student protests, we brought up issues such as eliminating government corruption and profiteering and wanting greater freedoms. These appeals were our aspirations, so of course I joined the protests.
So you say you were there because you loved your country, but it became clear that the Communist Party maybe didn't feel the same way about the students.
对，这就是中国当时的一个真正的悲剧。
Yes, this was a huge tragedy. The Communist Party cared more about its power. They separated the interests of the Communist Party from the interests of the people. Even though the party said that they represent the people's interests, at the time we truly experienced how the party put its own interests above the people's interests. When faced with the will of the people, they chose to use military repression and bloodshed. It was a real tragedy.
I think in a lot of people's minds, the image that comes to mind when they think of Tiananmen Square massacre is Tank Man. One man stopping a row of tanks. I think what a lot of people in the West don't know is that most of the tanks did not stop.
其实 这是两种不同的景象。
Actually, these are two different scenes. Yes, many people think of the Tank Man photo, but that happened on June 5th. On June 5th, there was this courageous young man who walked into Chang'an Avenue and stopped a row of tanks. The tanks did stop, and that became a famous photograph, a symbol. But many people don't know that the Chinese Communist Party's massacre really started before that, on the night of June 3rd to June 4th. My own misfortune is that on June 4th, around 6 a.m., I was also on Chang'an Avenue. But this time, when faced with a crowd of people, the Chinese government's tanks did not stop. They charged us directly from behind and killed many people on Chang'an Avenue, creating a huge tragedy. I was crushed by a tank and lost both of my legs. So I want to let everyone know that during the Tiananmen Square massacre, in terms of the relationship between tanks and people, Tank Man represents one part, but the tanks also really attacked and crushed many people, and I hope everyone can remember this.
You were there with students from your university. Well, what happened when you got word that the tanks were coming?
那个时候其实我们
At the time, we were already retreating from Tiananmen Square, retreating back to our universities. We had reached West Chang'an Avenue and Liubukou Street. We didn't think that the tanks would rush us from behind. At that point, the tanks had already taken over Tiananmen Square. We were withdrawing from the square, so we never thought that the tanks would attack us from behind. The tanks also threw smoke bombs, which were exploding around us, causing chaos. We couldn't see clearly. To tell the truth, we couldn't see the tanks until they were quite close to us. We didn't know the tanks were coming and charging towards us. Because they came from behind, we didn't know.
So what happened when the tanks caught up to you?
对，所以在那个时候，在那个路段，
It was very chaotic in that section of the road. At that point, I was walking with a young woman from my university, and she fainted from the smoke. I was trying to help her, so I picked her up and turned around. Very quickly, just as I turned around, the tanks drove up to us. I didn't have any time to run or hide. I could only push the young woman to a safe spot, but I myself was crushed by a tank. Of the other people who were in that same part of the road at the same time, we know that at least 11 people were crushed to death, and many others were injured like me.
What was going through your head when you got hit by the tank?
You can't say you were thinking about anything, because you can't really think. It was only 3 to 5 seconds from when I first saw the tank to when I felt it crushing me and lost consciousness. I wasn't thinking about much. I felt a few things. I felt the tank starting to roll over me. It felt like I was being squeezed. I also felt, right before losing consciousness, I had some awareness, and the last thing I remember is seeing the white of my bones sticking out of my leg. That was the last image before I lost consciousness. It happened very quickly.
So, you were a prominent student athlete at the time. What did the Communist Party say happened to you?
当然，6·4镇压之后，中国是一种全面的一种。
Of course, after the June 4th Tiananmen Square massacre, the entire country was in a state of total censorship and total control. The political atmosphere was totally different. For the students like me who had been injured, the first thing they wanted was for us to shut up. They didn't want us to tell other people the truth of what had happened to us. They put a lot of pressure on me. Of course, they didn't even admit that a tank crushed me. They didn't want me to say that fact. They wanted me to change my story. They even put a lot of pressure on the young woman who I rescued, until she was afraid to see me, and she denied the fact that we were together when the tanks came. The Chinese government has all the power. If you don't come to terms with them, they'll stop you from going to college, from graduating. You can't get a job, you'll have no income, or they'll put all sorts of pressure on your family members. So a lot of people will choose to lie, or to comply with what the government wants. A lot of people did this. But I'm glad that I did not compromise. I persisted in telling my real story, my real experiences to everyone. That's why afterwards I suffered a lot of injustice and persecution. Not having freedom, being arrested, having my house searched, not being able to get a job, etc. The price of telling the truth in China is still quite high. That is the current reality.
Why did you insist on telling the truth?
Because I felt that it was quite simple. A person should not have to deny the basic truth of his own experiences. I think you first of all have to be responsible to yourself. I also persisted because the Chinese government is afraid of us telling the truth, because they know the crimes they committed on June 4th, and they are afraid that everyone will know. So even though it was hard, I think persevering was worth it.
You must have felt a lot of despair during all of this. How did you carry on?
I did feel a lot of despair and regret, but I was still surrounded by the love and care of my family and friends. There are still many people out there who care about justice and have a conscience. The people around me gave me a lot of love and encouragement. My family and friends are one of the main reasons I could keep this up until today.
So even afterwards, you were a very accomplished athlete, but you weren't allowed to participate in international events. Why was that?
I think that one of the Chinese government's biggest worries, it was afraid that other people would find out how I was really injured. A lot of people actually already knew. But for the Chinese government, the more they could bury it, the better. So they took away my right to compete in international games and stopped me from having the opportunity to participate in athletic events for the disabled. For all these years, the main reason was to cover up the truth and bury the facts. They don't want people to bring up June 4th. They don't want people to know about June 4th.
Why is the Communist Party so afraid?
Of course, everyone knows that a criminal is afraid that their crimes will be exposed, and they know that they committed a huge crime back then. Criminals don't want people to know about their crimes. That's quite natural. In terms of both the international community and in China, for the past 29 years, they've used propaganda and other methods to cover up the truth. And they have been successful to a certain degree. Many young people barely know anything about what happened back then. There's almost no way for them to get this information. And through these cover-up methods and propaganda, the international community also pays less and less attention to this issue. So they've been able to get away with their crimes until today. So I feel like they've basically succeeded.
If so much of the world is forgetting what happened, why do you still speak out about the Tiananmen Square massacre?
There are two main reasons. One is that this is something that happened to me personally. Of course, I don't want people to forget something that I experienced, but the more important reason is that after June 4th, the Chinese government still continued its repression and persecution. The June 4th incident is not over. It's not finished. For example, the victims of June 4th still suffer persecution in China. The Tiananmen mothers whose children were killed have still not received justice. The June 4th issue has never been truly resolved. The truth has not been revealed. It's not clear to people. How many people died on June 4th? Who made the decision? Why did the tanks come after us, to kill us? All of these things, there is no truth. Until the truth is uncovered, I must speak out to remind everyone not to forget.
How were you able to leave China?
After 1989, I had no freedom for a long time. So getting a passport was even more out of the question. During the 2008 Beijing Olympics, I had a chance to get a Chinese passport as a type of exchange with the government. In 2008, the international community had a lot of requirements toward China, and China had made a lot of promises to the international community, like letting in journalists to do interviews. At that time, I had many interactions with foreign journalists who came to my hometown to interview me. At the time, the Chinese government was most worried about keeping me in my hometown. As long as I didn't go to Beijing, it was okay. Before this, I had applied for a passport many times, because I felt this was part of the normal rights of a citizen, but they refused me each time. The Domestic Security Bureau told me they couldn't give me a passport. But one day between the Olympics and the Paralympics, there was a German reporter who called me from Beijing. He wanted to come interview me. I knew him, and so I said yes. We arranged a time to meet. He also wanted me to take him to interview another disabled person. But 2 hours before we were going to meet, the police found out about it. They were either tapping my phone or the reporter's phone. They came to my house and took me away for a chat. They told me that they knew a reporter was coming to interview me. They told me, "We can let you speak to him, but we can't let you take him to interview other people. We can give you two choices. If you cooperate with us, we can consider giving you a passport. But if you want to go with him and take him to interview others, we can't give you a passport." So I met with the reporter and told him the police knew he was here, that they already visited me and they knew what we were going to do. He was very nervous about how the police managed to find him. We were meeting in a hotel, and there were many people who looked like plainclothes police there. I told him the whole situation, about how the police wouldn't let me go with him to interview another disabled person. And if I went, there would be consequences for everyone. But if I didn't go, they would give me a passport. The reporter decided to give up on the other interview. He said, even if I just report the story of what happened with you and the police, that's still a pretty significant story. So we didn't end up working together and going to interview other people, and he left to go to Sichuan to interview others. He then published the story of my encounter with the police in a newspaper when he returned to Germany. The Public Security Bureau felt that I had cooperated with their request and didn't cause them more trouble, so they gave me a passport on August 28, 2008. In 2009, with the help of the U.S. government, my family and I were able to come to America.
You've said the most effective weapon against the Chinese Communist Party is not to forget what they want you to forget. Why is that?
This has been one of the most difficult problems in China under the Chinese Communist Party's rule, this type of memory war. The Chinese Communist Party has continuously committed crimes against the Chinese people during different periods of history, over and over again, from when it first started to rule to the present day, almost 70 years now. But why is it still successful? The biggest reason is that through propaganda, brainwashing, and thought control, they've made people unaware of what happened in the past. They've separated each part of the past over and over again. So young people will have no idea about the crimes the party has committed in the past, so they will still believe and have illusions about the party. In this way, the party will be able to continue their rule, and their methods are working. But if we expose their errors and their crimes, and let people know about the past continuously, so that the memory is not broken off, it will be harder for them to rule, harder for them to continue their crimes. It's a similar principle to how, after World War II, the Nazis couldn't continue. They were destroyed because of how the Europeans and the Jewish people exposed the Nazis' crimes. They publicized them and kept the memory alive so that people could fully understand their crimes, and they could not continue. But in China, we haven't done this with the Chinese Communist Party's crimes, so they have been able to continue. This is one way we can oppose them. This is the resistance of memory. When we were young, because of our brainwashed education, we did not know many of the things the Communist Party had done in China's past. Today, many young people growing up in China with information control and this brainwashed education also don't know what happened on June 4th. Each generation is separated. History is isolated. The truth is severed. That means we haven't done enough. So one of my biggest responsibilities now is to tell more people about this so they will know. I especially hope that young people in China will know about this.
You used to be a Communist Party member. I'm wondering if you have officially quit?
When I was in college, I joined the Communist Party in 1987. At that time, we had a certain amount of faith in the party. Although we had just come out of, and we were against, the personality cult of Mao Zedong, we still had faith in the Communist Party. Afterwards, we found out that just opposing personality cults wasn't enough. There was something fundamentally wrong with the Communist Party as an organization. We need to have a good system. Relying on a ruling party doesn't work. But at the time, we didn't realize this. Now we've slowly realized that China can't just depend on a ruling party. We need a good system. Only then can we have a normal country and avoid tragedies like the June 4th incident. After June 4th, the Communist Party wanted me to lie. They wanted me to use my party spirit to cover up the truth. They said it was in the party's interests. I couldn't accept this because I felt the party's interests were in conflict with the people's interests, that the party spirit was against the human spirit. I couldn't accept this, so I naturally left this organization.
So I know you don't have hope for the Chinese Communist Party, but do you have hope for the future of China?
One must have hope. I do have hope for the future of China. But right now, I don't have much confidence, to be honest. There are many difficulties. In the short term, I can't see any definite reasons for hope. But we must still keep going with a hopeful attitude. Because ultimately, China will become a normal country. It will become like other countries in the world. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of how long it will take.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I can assure you, on China Uncensored, we'll never forget the Tiananmen Square massacre.
Yes.
Thank you.